I put it around, and then it's just like, let's try it. I don't even know what song that is. It's just stuck in my head. I'll just hang out here. Oh, it does say Darth Vader. I've never edited slides while on stage. I don't know what you're talking about. Wrong on both sides. How dumb is that?
Okay. We're going to get kicked off with another really fun presentation.
Don't make me live up to that expectation.
I took Kevin's web app pen testing course way back in the day, and man, I don't think I've ever laughed harder in a pen testing course. It was so much fun.
This course sucked so bad. He was
It was terrible. And I didn't do very well in the CTF, but that's okay. You know, it happens. So we have Kevin Johnson here. He's the CEO of Secure Ideas, and he is here to tell us about seeing further, building better penetration testing with code.
No.
No code.
No code.
No code.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin. I never know how to start these things, right? It's like, hey, I'm Kevin. I'm fucking awesome. Wait, no, I'm not. Oh, just so you know, this talk is going to be PG-13. I have not been diagnosed with Tourette's, but we believe I have it. Both of my daughters were diagnosed with Tourette's. I told my oldest daughter when she got the diagnosis that this was great because she could yell motherfucker at any time and nobody could question it. So we're just starting out on the right foot here. He said this is going to be a fun talk. I don't know for who. Gentleman in the back's already ready to boo. Awesome, good, good. So the idea here is I'm going to talk about building better pen testing. And the reason I'm going to talk about building better pen testing is because we suck at it. I am, and I want to be very clear. Many of you don't know me, or many of you know me, and for those of you who know me, I'm sorry. Your life is worse because you've met me. I'm actually an asshole in court records, and it's not divorce court, where I assume that happens a lot. I was called an asshole by the defense attorney during a deposition because he kept misquoting my report to me and then asking a question, and I would say, that's not what I said, because I had my report in front of me, and he would say things like, on page 3, paragraph 4, you said, no, I didn't. On the 10th time he did it, I finally said, sir, you seem to be having trouble reading my report. Would you like me to read it to you? And his response, like, stop for a second. Like, I always love it when I'm in a deposition and I can make the attorney speechless, right? Like, that is one of my, it's not an official goal, right? Like, we don't work toward that, but I like it, right? And he stood and he stared at me for a second and he goes, wow, you really are an asshole, aren't you? And I didn't know what to say because I was under oath. So I said, yes, sir, I am. So then, like 9 months later, we went to trial, right? I'm the expert witness for this case, and God, I really believe that the defendants should have been set on fire. They were the people, you know those people that like call up and say, hi, we're Windows, sign up for our service and we'll help you? That was them. We were shutting companies like that down, right? And so I get to the courtroom, and in this courtroom, you swear in, then you walk past the judge and you sit down. And so I swore in, walked past the judge, and the judge went, wait a minute. You're the asshole, aren't you? And again, I didn't know what to do. So I looked at her and went, yes, Your Honor, I am. And then I sat down and testified. It was crazy. And that is what you're going to talk about for the next hour. We are going to have a conversation about pen testing and how we shouldn't be assholes. And we should get better at what we do. I am Kevin Johnson. I am a founder of Secure Ideas, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the head nerd. We are I always get a kick out of it, we are a boutique consulting firm. Somebody said that to me once, and I'm like, we don't sell flowers. Because like I always heard of flower boutiques, right? That was where I had always heard that word. So somebody else came up with, just recently, and I giggled hard enough that I'm gonna repeat it now. We are a bespoke consulting firm, right? We're not making you suits. But I am the founder of Secure Ideas. We are a security consulting firm, and our focus is pen testing. I mean, come on, our slogan is professionally evil, right? Like, that's what we do. We come in, we break in, we tell you your baby is ugly, and then we go home. And let's be honest, all babies are ugly until they're about 3 months old. They don't have kneecaps, their skull has holes in it, they're kind of squishy, right? We lie to parents like, oh, your baby's so adorable. Oh my God, what happened to that kid? Did they drop it? I actually saw a kid once. His elbows were hairy. I don't think that's normal, right? Like this is my job. I get to go in and these people have like slaved over this web app that they've built for 27 years. And then I steal all the shit from it in like 35 minutes. And like, hey, we tested this one app. God, some people are dumb, right? And sadly, you know that like the majority of people in the world are average intelligence or below because that's how math works, right? And they're building all of our stuff. And I want to be very clear, this is not a developers are dumb talk because developers aren't. Well, okay, some are. But some security people are dumb. I'm dumb, right? We tell developers, build stuff, you have a deadline that is way shorter than you meant it to be. Like when I was a developer, my boss would say to me all the time, how long do you need to build this? And I'd be like, 6 months. And he'd go, you have 2 weeks. I'm like, why the fuck do you ask? Were you just making me feel like I was part of the discussion? Oh, we've already sold it. What? We've also promised all the features work. Well, that's wrong. But we build stuff, and now we're testing it. So I'm the security consultant guy. I'm the guy that has no stress because I get to come in, tell you it sucks, and leave. I have no responsibility. I have no skin in the game because we don't fix stuff. We don't. We consider it a conflict of interest. I've never really understood these companies who are like, we'll pen test you, and then we'll sell you the blinker fluid for your car afterwards, right? Like, we'll fix it at the same time. That just seems wrong. I'm also an IANS faculty member. I'm an open source fanatic. I also like to wear Star Wars costumes, which saying it that way sounds weird. Okay, it is weird. But we go and visit kids in the hospital and stuff like that. Like the Vader up there, the big one, not the little one. The little one's my kid. That's me. And they brought 300 blind kids in. And they had them watch the Star Wars movies. And then we stood there for a few hours and let the kids feel the costumes. All of us are crying in our helmets. Like that, I don't know another way to put it, right? So that's what we do. That's me. If you have questions about security, if you want to, matter of fact, we're hiring. If you want to talk about that, we can go here. But I'm pointing all this out, one, because like it's sales pitch time. I have to tell you how cool we are, something like that. But the reality is, I am in an odd position. Not only have I been in the IT field since 1991, because I'm old. I got my first job right out of high school building code to help control the power grid. What should scare the crap out of you is that code is still running in some utilities in the United States today. I'm a shitty programmer now. Like, let's not even talk about how bad I was at 18, right? So I started in IT, and then I got into security, and I started doing IR and incident forensics and pen testing and all this kind of stuff. And I've seen, with the way Secure Ideas works, we try to advise our customers. I know. Every used car salesman says, I want to be your best friend, and then they screw you over on interest rates or something. But we try to advise our customers. And so a lot of times, we're actually looking at pen test reports from other companies. So that's an odd position for a pen tester. Another part of the odd position I'm in is I teach a lot. So I used to teach and write courses for SANS, then I stopped doing that, and I moved over to doing it ourselves. We work with Anti-Siphon to push out code and classes. We got some amazing stuff coming next year, and because of this, I actually teach a lot of the people who do pen testing, right? Which I actually always find it funny because we give out our professional evil stickers in class, and they put it on their work laptop, and then they go do pen tests on site at their customers, and then their customers call us the next year. It seems wrong, right? How did you hear about us? Well, our pen testers last year had your logo on their laptop, so we thought we should call you. Okay. But because of this, I see a lot of pen testing. Okay? I see it outside of my organization. And I also want to point out that I'm talking about both internal teams and third-party teams. So pen testing's been around for a while. And this is actually funny. So I started, for this talk, I actually did research. That's another way of saying I Googled it. Like all these people, I researched the vaccines. I'm still mad, I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, and my 5G signal has not improved. They lied to me, right? But it's okay, October 10th, it's all clotting or some bullshit like that. Recently they started talking about. But so we looked it up, and they have been talking about penetration testing as a term since the 60s. I will also point out that was before I was born. I can say that. The other number up there was only a year before I was born, so I feel bad about that one. If you don't want just people discussing it, but you want a formal peer-reviewed paper, stuff like that, you people with like degrees or something probably prefer that. They wrote the first paper that mentioned it in 1972. So let's go with the 1972 number, mainly because the math is easier. That was 50 years ago. 50 years we have been talking about penetration testing. And when I talk about penetration testing, I'm talking of computer equipment. They were talking about the computer equipment, the network, and things like that in the 60s. For more than 50 years, we've been talking about pen testing, and we still, today, don't have a good answer for it. We don't know what we call it, things like that. No, it's gotten more popular in the 2000s, right? I don't know how to math on slides. Let me be very clear. More than 30 years ago is technically correct because 50 is more than 30 years ago. Nobody hires me for math, right? But we've been doing it like really, really popular since the 2000s. I did the mainframes are dead comment because I'm starting to hear from people. We do different meetings with owners of companies, and we talk and stuff like that. And one of the guys is constantly saying, this pen testing thing is going away, right? Yeah, like mainframes and passwords. I loved that reference this morning, right? Passwords are dead. Yeah, bullshit. But, so we've been doing it forever, and the reality is we suck at it. And I say we suck at it, and not, by the way, not Secure Ideas. We don't suck. Okay, that's not true. Everybody sucks. The number of times people come to me and say, I need a penetration test. And then they giggle because they're fifth grade boys or something. And I can say that because I named my open source project Samurai WTF. But stands for Web Training Framework, honest. We treat it often as a game or a contest. How many people here have heard a penetration tester, myself included, say things like, yep, we got domain admin, we win, right? Here, I go to DEF CON, I go to GERCON, I don't go to ShowMeCon anymore because those jerks closed it down. So we listen to speakers, right? We talk about, nobody ever talks about, well, that's not true, it's getting better. But very rarely do we hear talks about, this is what we failed at doing. These are the controls that kept us out. No, we hear stupid stories like, I broke into the wrong bank. I flew a plane sideways, right? These are the talks. We put Kevin Mitnick on stage on a regular basis. You mean a guy who is an unapologetic convicted felon. And I want to be very clear, I don't have any problems with convicted felons. I really don't. I believe if you've served your time, we should absolutely, now there's our exceptions to this, right? We want to talk about sexual crimes, rape, murder, things like that. That's a different conversation. But if you've served your time, in my opinion, you're good. You did something bad, you got caught, you served time, you're fine now, okay? But Kevin Mitnick regularly gets up on stage and says, well, it's illegal, but I don't think it was wrong for me to do what I did. He works for a company, he formed a company that is well known for plagiarizing content, right? We'll talk about this in a second. Many people think I look like Kevin Mitnick. I regularly get asked to sign his book. So I do. I sign it Kevin Johnson because I don't lie. I actually have an eBay alert looking for signed copies of his book because I'm waiting to find out how much somebody would pay for a Kevin Mitnick book signed by Kevin Johnson. One hasn't hit eBay yet. But we go out there and we don't have a good definition, right? And I want to be very clear. We actually have a great definition. A penetration test is a security assessment where you try to exploit vulnerabilities. If you don't try to exploit vulnerabilities, it's not a pen test. If you run Nessus against a whole bunch of targets and stop, that's not a pen test. Nothing against Nessus, but it's not. And people will say, well, what happens if you don't actually exploit anything? I said, so you failed at exploitation. Yes, still a pen test, right? Because you tried. Now I would ask, why didn't you succeed? Why did you not find something else? Why did you not? Same thing though, I'll go another place. I did a pen test, I got in, I got domain admin. Okay, what did you do next? I wrote a report. That's not a pen test, in my opinion. That's a capture the flag. And there are places for capture the flags, but they're not pen tests. My job as a penetration tester is to find as many flaws as I can find in the time frame I've got, within the scope of what I've got, and verify that they're real and evaluate the risk. That's my job. And if you can't say you're doing that, you're not really doing pen testing. And you're damn straight not helping your customer. Hey, I broke in, I got domain admin. Yes! Your passwords suck. Your password was winter 2022. It almost got me because it hasn't been fall yet. You know when your password for the domain admin account is the name of your company, but capitalized incorrectly? That's not a strong password. Real example. Right? If I go in and get domain admin and I stop, I haven't done a pen test. I haven't helped my customer. What did the customer know? The customer now knows Kevin has domain admin. What did I help? Did I improve their security? I always love there's a security consulting firm that used to use the slogan. I think they've been bought or shut down or something like that. But they used to use the slogan, helping improve your security by hacking you. You know that I don't actually improve your security? When we're done with the pen test, you have no better security than when you started the pen test. Unless you change the things I found, right? So we have to have a good definition, right? That's one thing. The other thing we have is we have a lot of gatekeeping. And I don't mean that, I want to be very clear. I acknowledge the fact that I'm a straight, fat, white guy. I am absolutely the epitome of, I don't fucking understand stuff. The only way you could make me more of a stereotype is to name me Karen. But what I see is so many people are like, I just saw it this morning, and I read it, and I almost responded to the jackhole. I did respond to him, but I almost responded with, thank you, I needed more to cover this afternoon when I'm speaking. It's not the afternoon, damn, it's morning. But I actually almost wrote to this guy and say I wanted to screenshot his stuff. John Strand, who is awesome, and I'm talking about the security guy, not the underwear model who performed insurrection by invading the Capitol, because that John Strand is now first in Google. So John Strand of Black Hills tweeted out, I don't know, a week ago or something like that, and he's like, hey, if you work for a big company, go to your HR company, HR group, and get your HR group to start adding, instead of college degree required. And I want to be very clear, I'm not making fun of college degrees. I'm just too stupid to get one. I barely made it through high school. There are teachers in my high school that are now thinking to themselves that they were stupid because they thought I was a moron. They were right. But John said, please stop making it a requirement to have a degree alone. Please add things like CTFs and experience and intern, like add that. So if I don't have a degree, but I went through Meta CTF and I did all this training and I did a whole bunch of bug bounty programs and I showed experience, let's have that be equivalent, not equivalent like, oh yeah, you have a doctorate and I got in the top 4,000 on Bugcrowd or some crap like that, right? That's not what we're saying, but we're saying like, let people in. And this dude, he responds with, so you're telling me you expect me to work with people who don't have degrees and treat them the same way as me who went through a 4-year program? Yeah, boo's the right word. Do you know who has a degree? Dr. Oz. And I believe that recently he said that you can improve the gas mileage of your car by shoving strawberries up your ass. I might have made that up. But here's the best part. You actually had to think about, did Kevin make that up or did Dr. Oz actually say that? And I don't care your politics, but have you seen some of the lawyers who have worked for Trump? They had a press conference in front of a landscaping company. And again, I'm not making fun of your politics. Whoever you support, whatever. A landscaping company. They have college degrees. That's the gatekeeping I'm talking about. What's the average cost of a cybersecurity training program? I'll break it to you. It's over $5,000 for one class. That's average. And considering the fact that my CIS mentorship is free, if you want it to be free, you can imagine what the top end of those numbers are. I was just talking to a trainer, and he does corporate training, and he was complaining that an organization wasn't willing to give him his $143,000 three-day training fee. I wanted to know why it wasn't just 145. Like, what was it about the three? My cost is 142,987 and 16 cents, right? Like, he was complaining like, it's so ridiculous that they won't pay me over $100,000. I'm like, how long is your class? 3 days. But it's an intense 3 days. Right? That's what we got. That's how we handle it. We're like, oh, for you to be a pen tester, you must have your OSCP. How many people here have their OSCP? You know what that tells me? You tried harder. And I think the OSCP is actually kind of cool. It's a hands-on lab. It gives you information. That's cool. But do you know the last time I wrote a custom Bofer, those Bofer overflows, that's when they're in Ruby. Somebody's gonna say, Kevin, you know Ruby doesn't have access to memory. Like, fuck yeah, I know that. It was a joke about the pronunciation. Ruby, the language that you are guaranteed never to have the environment work if you are supporting 2 different code bases. The library, it's miserable. The OSCP, I never write custom buffer overflows during my pen test. Why? Because for 99% of my customers, because we do them for some customers, that's useless. Hey, I found a vulnerability in your system. I built an exploit for it. How do we fix it? Oh man, I don't know, because I just found it. Right? Did we tell the vendor? No, I have a non-disclosure agreement. I'm not allowed to tell the vendor. Right? Is that really teaching people how to pen test? We have kids that are coming out of college. I actually interviewed these kids coming out of college. These people they were in the postgraduate program. And if I understand it correctly, that means they had the 4-year degree and they were going for their master's. You people who actually went to college can correct me if I'm wrong. And I interviewed them to come in and we called it an internship, but it wasn't really, it was an internship. It was more advanced than that. It was higher up in that. It was really just a step into becoming a consultant. And I actually asked multiple students, what operating systems are you familiar with working with? One of them said SSH. And I said, no, not how you connect to the system. What is the operating system you're connecting to? And the guy said, SSH. Like, saying it to me again was going to change my reaction. And I feel bad, because I don't want to be gatekeeping myself. I'm complaining about gatekeeping. But this guy, and there were multiple of them in this interview process, one person, the operating system they were most familiar with was Office 365. I will acknowledge that's closer than SSH. That's the college education these people are getting. Like, that's a problem, right? So we need to make it better. And in my opinion, these are the 3 main things we have to fix. And I'm not going to Spanish Inquisition this and come up with a 4th one, because I've already written the slides. But we've got a problem with quality, validation, and understanding. Those are them. So let's look into each of these 3 things. I really should have remembered my clicker. And no, I'm not going to borrow one if somebody has one, because I'm not plugging USB from you into my laptop. But thank you very much. I always feel bad when people come up and they're like, hey, here you go. I'm like, yeah, thanks. Don't you trust me? No. It's like, it's my job not to trust you. So the first thing is quality. Right? We see this one all the time. I am amazed. How many people here are on Reddit? Reddit is awesome and scary as hell. One of my favorite subreddits, I think that's what they're called, is the pen testing one. And I troll that. No, I'm sorry, I idle there. I'm not trolling. I'm not that kind of. Okay, I troll there. And the number of times people are like, hey, I'm doing a pen test, and I don't understand what Nmap is. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm glad they're asking. I really am. I'm thrilled they're asking. But at that point, you're not ready to do a pen test. Not by yourself, right? What I want to know is, how did you, not you, because somebody else sold your service. Somebody else convinced somebody to pay money for you to learn Nmap on their systems, right? And my question is, why is that okay as an industry? I'm not questioning that person's ethics. I really am not. And I always hate the term ethical hacker. It's such a stupid fucking term. I'm an ethical hacker. Really, all hackers are ethical. Ethics are personal. That dude's ethics said he could rob a bank. Mine don't. We're both ethical hackers. Or they go like, are you a white hat? I don't wear hats. Why do we get that one? Like white hat, gray hat, black hat. Like, oh man, it's stupid. Never mind. But so we have a quality problem, right? How many people here have seen the websites? $500 will pen test your whole organization. $500? $500? I'll give you an idea. Secure Ideas' retail rate is $300 an hour. That's what we bill, $300 an hour. That's on our website. We have our pricing on our website. We're one of the few bespoke consulting firms that do that. Why? Because we want to share information, right? We want to share everything. For $500, you got an hour and 2/3 from one of my people. Do you know how much we can pen test you? Not much. And we're good. Don't get me wrong. Jason got domain admin on a network through a web app on the internet on the first day of the test. Notice I said first day because he went and did all the other stuff too. From the internet, domain admin. Why? Because he understood how the system worked. That took more than an hour and 2/3, right? So we have a quality problem. We also have an issue with scope. And to me, the scope problem is an experience problem. How many people here have done a pen test where they were told, we have a penetration test for compliance reasons, right? PCI requires it. GLBA requires it. HIPAA, spelled with 2 P's, not 1 P the correct way, because we don't fucking know. And I blame Blue Cross for that. When I worked at Blue Cross of Florida, I was part of the project implementing HIPAA controls, and the logo they used for it was a hippo. And every time I saw it, I'm like, guys, you just are gonna make people misspell that. Sure enough, that's why I blame Blue Cross. It's all their fault. But we get scopes like, okay, we would like you to pen test us. It's very important to test our entire comprehensive security program. Great. So everything's in scope. Oh, God, no. We've got 3 IP addresses. They're behind Cloudflare. Test those. By the way, 2 of them were turned off. Or we had one company come to us, they're like, we need a pen test. We have this application, people are buying it, they're requiring a pen test. Great, awesome. So we're gonna test the application. Yes. Okay. Start going around, we get user IDs because we're gonna do different roles, testing. Good, everything sounds good so far, right? Everything sounds good. Okay, cool. You're allowed to test the app from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'm not making up that scope. Unsurprisingly, those were their 3 change windows where they turned off the app to do updates and maintenance and things like that. So when they said that to us, let me be very clear, we did not do that test. We're like, no. I always love it, like, you can test all my stuff. Well, except those servers over there. Why can't we test those servers over there? They're vulnerable. What are they vulnerable to? Everything. What do those servers hold? All of our stuff. We had one company get mad at us because we could see the guest password for their wireless network from the parking lot. So we signed in and then found out that their captive portal pretended to be on a VLAN, so we had access to all of their internal network, right? Then they tried to tell us the parking lot was out of scope. Right? So we have this problem. And then we have the problem with communication. How many people do a pen test once a year? Right? Most companies that do pen testing do it once a year. How often do they talk to the security people the rest of the year? Right? I love when people call me up and they're like, hey, it's December 27th. You're right. And it's funny, most of them actually start the conversation with the date, as if I don't have a watch and a calendar and a sense of time. Hello, who are you? Oh, I'm the CISO of blah, 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 blah. And it turns out our auditors meant it when they said we needed an annual pen test. Oh, okay. So when's your fiscal year end? The 31st. Okay. Can you have a pen test done by the end of the year? No. I can have it started by the end of the year. We start lots of pen tests between the 26th and the 31st. It's on that year. And then I don't hear from them. We have customers that we reach out to sometime in June and say, you remember last year when you called me in December and said, oh my God, I need a pen test? Yeah, I remember that. You want to arrange that earlier? No, I don't think they mean it this year. Okay, I'll talk to you in a couple months. And we don't talk to people. We do pen tests. I've actually talked to customers that have had another pen test firm work with them the year before, and they're amazed at how often we reach out to them during the pen test. They're amazed when we ask them questions like, hey, I just did this thing. Did you notice? Why do you care? Because I want to write in the report that you're doing good monitoring and logging and alerting. unless you didn't notice. And then I want to write in the report that you suck at monitoring and logging and alerting. Wait, you're going to tell me when you do stuff? Yes, I'm going to tell you when you do stuff, because I want you to be able to see the other side of it. Because we want to have a partnership with our customers. And by the way, if you're not a third-party pen tester, you work for a company, you still have customers. They just happen to get a paycheck from the same company you do. We need to be better at talking to people. We need to be better at explaining how we do it. We need to be better at understanding our own tooling. What, was it Heartbleed? Yeah, it was Heartbleed. A number of years after Heartbleed was out, I get an email from some doof on the internet, and it says, Mr. Johnson, your company is vulnerable to Heartbleed. And I'll admit it, my first thought was, shit, what did we miss? Right, because I'm a very firm believer that if we've screwed something up, it was probably me, right? We'll start with us. I start with troubleshooting on my own side because I know I can fix the stuff I broke. If I troubleshoot and find out it was Wolf, I got to convince him to fix it. And he's so focused on toasters, and I'm using a microwave oven, and he doesn't even know what to do with that. And so I'd rather it be me. So internally, I'm like, people, look, are we really, like, did we forget a system? Did we stand up vulnerable systems for classes? And did we fuck up and put it in the wrong place? Or like, what do we do? At the same time, I wrote back to the person, I'm like, hey, thanks for writing me. Could you give me a little more detail? You know, like that. Oh, yeah. Your main website is vulnerable to Heartbleed. Now at that point, I'm like, no, it's not. So I wrote back to the guy, and I'm like, I don't mean to argue with you. Not gonna argue with you, but could you explain why you think so? And he sent me back a screenshot of Nmap. You know Nmap has a scripting engine. He ran Nmap against our production website. And he ran the script to check for Heartbleed. And the result said, not vulnerable to Heartbleed. But he ran it in debug mode. So it printed the TLS handshake, you know, like to the output. And he ignored where it said not vulnerable to Heartbleed and decided that the debug mode was a vulnerable part of Heartbleed. And so I got to explain to this random French guy, he was from France, not that that matters, but he gave up. But how debug mode works in Nmap. I also had to explain to him that we don't have a bug bounty program and he didn't have permission to test our systems and he probably shouldn't have done that, but that's a different conversation. He didn't understand his own tools, right? And I see that constantly. I ran this, I wanted to do this, right? It's ridiculous. The next thing we see, validation. This is a big one. You do a test, how many false negatives do you find? None that we know of is the correct answer. Because if it's a false negative, you don't know it's vulnerable, right? How many false positives? Those are my favorite. You're vulnerable. To what? To this. You sure? I don't know, Nessus told me you were. It was in orange. Orange scares me, mostly because of pumpkin spice. I don't know why that scares me. It's not even that good. Ugh. But we look at things, we test it, right? How many people here use Burp? Yeah. How many people here use Burp's passive scanner to tell you when a DOM-based redirect exists in the JavaScript code, right? I can't be the only one. People, the passive scanner works well, right? Okay, so here's the problem. I have been using their passive scanner for somewhere around 75 years. Might be exaggerating. I think I have found a single time that Burp correctly identified a DOM-based redirect using passive scanning. I will acknowledge the fact that that one time was in their Web Academy where they were teaching DOM-based attacks, so I'm glad it found it, right? And I'm not making fun of the tool, right? That's a very difficult thing for an automated tool to detect. I would rather Burp give me false positives, because my job is to look at that and understand what's going on and evaluate it, right? Here's the problem. Tons of people just take that from Burp and put it in the report. Oh, it must be vulnerable. Burp says it. And how could you not trust something called Burp? The only tool you'd trust more is one called Fart. You know I'm right. This is the only industry that you can go in front of the CEO or like Senate and talk about things like burp, vomit, FU, right? And those are all legitimate tool names. What did you say to me? I said FU. But we look at this stuff, so false positives are bad. But we also have false negatives. And in my experience, most false negatives are because the person testing doesn't actually understand the system they're testing, right? I was following up on an auditor. We do a lot of work where auditors will bring us in. We do the technical assessment. They do the other stuff. But I was actually following up on an audit that failed. They were doing, doesn't matter. I realized I can't anonymize it enough. They did an audit, it wasn't accepted, they brought in a different audit firm. So we're looking at stuff, and what we found was that when you port scanned this system, it fell over. Okay? Well, it happens, right? So we were poking and prodding, and we found massive vulnerabilities. And now we're following up on a failed audit, right? So we're talking to the customer about the previous audit. The previous auditor had actually told them that that server had 0 risks. So they dug into the work product, and what it turned out was they would port scan first. Asset discovery, right? Let's see what's out there. The system would fall over. They would not notice that it was there for the initial start of the port scan and not there at the end of the port scan. And then they would run a vuln scan against the IP addresses. The machine wasn't listening anymore because it was still rebooting, and it found 0 vulnerabilities on a host it couldn't connect to, right? That's a false negative. We were working with a website that had that cool, you remember the hacker safe sticker that was on websites? And then because, what is it, McAfee Secure bought it, and like they would scan your website every day and give you a little, ooh, you're secure, hacker safe, this is awesome. So I was testing the site, and we're just trashing this site. We're pulling vulns out, we're dumping data, we're like poking around. We actually, a number of times during the test, stopped, called the customer and said, look, can we stop? Because this all sucks. Like, you're so bad, we can't get a control to block us, right? Like, we're throwing SQL injection flaws, and the LDAP server's like, you're getting me next, so I might as well dump stuff to you now, right? Like, it was just awful. And they're like, Kevin, I don't understand it. McAfee tells us our website is completely secure. I'm like, well, okay. So we looked at it, because they wanted to know why. Turned out they were name-based hosted, right? So when you hit www.securideas.com, the server went, oh, that's this stuff here, right? And they had told McAfee to scan their IP address. So they were getting the Apache It Works page, and that wasn't vulnerable to any attacks. That's a false negative, right? Because guess what? The It Works page has no dynamic content or parameters to attack. 100% safe. That's not true. We could probably find a vulnerability in it, but let's just go with it, right? It's like Oracle, unbreakable. The next one is thresholds. Let's be very clear. When we do a pen test, very often we're not subtle. You might not know this about me, but I'm not a subtle person. We're like, blah, and we hack stuff. Because what we're being asked to is find all the vulnerabilities. But now here's a question. I found a brute force attack. I can brute force these accounts. Did you notice? Yes, Kevin, when you attempted 10 million attempts against that server, we saw it. Okay, great. So I tried 10 million attempts with 2 seconds between them. That's an exaggeration. Let's go with that, but right? And then they stopped noticing, because the 2-second threshold was enough of a time for their monitoring not to catch it. Did you test that in the pen test you did? Because I did. Did you test to see that they unlock locked accounts 37 seconds later? right? Do you know that when you send a whole bunch of payloads at a system and you get 500 errors back, 500 status code errors, not 500 of them, that as long as you only get 20 500 as long as you only get 20 errors in a 30-minute period, their alerting ignores it. The minute you go over 20 errors in a 30-minute period, they alert like crazy. Those are the thresholds we should be measuring for when we do pen tests, right? Because the attackers, I have a week, I have 2 weeks, I have a month. The attackers have forever. And I'm not saying that like, oh my God, they're gonna get in because they have forever. I'm saying we should be, in the time that we have, evaluating the actual thresholds that you have so that you can better tune them to your risk level. So that you can get a better idea of what's going on and what you need to handle. And then the last topic is understanding. And this is the big one. My God, people don't understand shit. The biggest one I find, right? I see cyber risks everywhere. Most people don't even know what a cyber risk is. I was in Oklahoma, and I think Oklahoma is the best way to place this because of, well, I'll explain it in a second. And I was speaking, and I asked the audience, how many of you are actively afraid of sharks? I'll ask here, how many of you are afraid of sharks? I got a few people raising their hands. Are you actively afraid of sharks? Like, oh man, okay, good. He said no. That's a good answer, right? There are people in this audience like, yes. Like you're actively, like you could get bitten by a shark right now. Well, not right now, but I'm really worried about it. You're in a landlocked state. The only way somebody in Oklahoma is being bitten by a shark is if they're transporting one from one aquarium to another and they run their truck into it. You know what you should be afraid of? Cows and soda machines. I'm dead serious. Cows will fuck you up. People are like, oh, they're so adorable. Moo. Yeah, go try tipping that bastard. More people die every year in the US from cow attacks and soda machines individually, not together, than die worldwide from shark attacks. Do you know why that is? People fuck with cows and they steal sodas. And they literally will pull the soda machine down on top of themselves and it will crush them because they're stealing soda, right? But Discovery Channel doesn't have a Pepsi week. That's probably because of Pepsi. Pepsi's like, no, we don't want people afraid of us. Cow week. Daisy was pissed, right? I don't know, Daisy's a cow name in my head. I'm not sure. I've never actually dealt with cows. I don't know. Anybody know a cow name? Bessie. That's what I should have said. Bessie. But we talk to people all the time, they don't understand things. They don't understand what they're talking about. How many people here, have heard the statement, no site should ever use SMS MFA? Right? I've argued with people on Twitter about that. Don't get me wrong. Kevin is not standing up on this stage saying, man, SMS MFA is the best way possible. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there are certain areas of the country, there are certain demographics, age, race, whatever, where as many as 30% of that population does not have a smartphone, which means the only form of two-factor authentication they have is SMS. Now, I'm okay with that for certain situations. I'm okay with, as a corporation, as Secure Ideas does not support SMS MFA for our systems. Why? Because our staff all have smartphones. They all have the ability to get on the internet. To do their job, they need a smartphone and the ability to get on the internet. So for us to make that requirement is reasonable. But to say, okay, I just saw it this morning. Again, this morning was great for this talk. Blizzard just announced that they will not support prepaid cell phones for their guard system, like Battle Guard or whatever they call it. If you want to build, not BattleNet, BattleNet is their system, right? But to get into BattleNet, they've got this system to help do two-factor authentication. And they will not support prepaid cell phones. I have family members that have prepaid cell phones because they can't afford anything else. And I don't like them enough to give them a phone. I have long said the wrong in-laws died in my family. My wife's parents are dead. They have a prepaid phone, so they're not allowed to use any BattleNet software. That seems bad, right? And to me, that's not Blizzard being stupid. That's a lack of understanding of your audience, right? And that's important. How many people here go into organizations and say, oh, security, I'll give you a good one. How many people here have seen an audit get failed because you're running TLS 1.1? Yeah. Let me ask a question. Raise your hand if you have ever exploited a production system. We'll assume with permission, so we're not outing you, right? If you have ever exploited a system directly via TLS 1.1. Nobody, right? That's one of those checkbox bullshit answers. Oh, you're running TLS version 1. That's catastrophic. Motherfucker, they're also running Windows Vista. Now, Windows Vista, that's actually one of our customers. We found Windows Vista in their DMZ. Don't ask. I will acknowledge that's probably safer than other things they could have run because most of the people attacking the network are too young to remember Windows Vista. One of my consultants actually said, I thought it was a joke. And he meant the operating system because he was born after Windows Vista. I'm old, right? People don't understand the systems they're doing. I had, okay, great. I have TLS 1.1. That's bad for compliance reasons. But is it really a risk or a threat to my organization? Right? It's kind of like that whole thing about reputational harm. How many people here have said as an no, don't raise your hand for this one because I'm going to call you out. How many people here have heard, oh my God, we have to fix this problem. If we get hacked, it'll be reputational harm. Right? We hear it all the time. In my opinion, reputational harm, said by a consultant or a security person, is the easiest way to find out that they're either lazy or stupid. One of the two. And the reason I say that is that very few examples of reputational harm can actually be shown to be worth that's the only risk. Let me be very clear. How many people still shop at Target? Right? How many people still shop at Best Buy? The NSA is still an agency. Right? South Carolina still has residents. These are all examples of organizations that have been compromised massively. And yet, we still deal with them. We still work with them. We still shop at their organizations. They actually interviewed people right after the TJ Maxx attack. I know that's an old one. I actually saw interviews with people. Hey, you know this company was compromised, right? Yes. You know the attackers stole credit card numbers, right? Yes. Did you just pay with a credit card? Yes. Aren't you worried? No, because they must be secure now. It was like weeks after. Right? People don't know. I was teaching a class once, and one class argued with me, and they said, no. My organization has done a lot of research in it, and our biggest risk across the board, that's his words, not mine. His words were, our biggest risk as an organization across the board is reputational harm. And I looked at this dude, and I'm like, you're wrong. I'm not saying reputational harm doesn't happen. I'm saying there are other risks that are bigger. And that's why I say it's either lazy or stupid. You're too lazy to figure out the other risks because you don't have the understanding or whatever, or you are actually stupid. And I say stupid there, not ignorant. Ignorant is curable, even though what we see on Facebook implies it's not. Ignorance is curable. Stupid is you had the opportunity to learn it and you chose not to, okay? Or you chose not to accept the facts. And this guy said, no, Kevin, Reputational harm is our biggest risk. I'm like, really? He's like, yes, we've done a lot of research. I'm like, great, I'll bite. Who do you work for? Comcast. That was my reaction. I laughed because I assumed he was kidding. Their reputation can't get worse. As a customer of theirs, I am hoping they get hacked because I believe the attackers would run their network better. We don't understand what we're getting into. We don't understand the things we're working with. We don't understand the technologies and things like that. Let me be clear. I was actually, and I was verifying it wasn't Booz Allen, because I didn't want to make fun of you guys. Well, I was going to make fun of you guys from stage if it was you. But anybody here see that E&Y got fined for cheating on the tests? They cheated on the ethics portion. That, to me, is a lack of understanding. It's also an ethical problem, but that's a different conversation. Like, we keep hiring groups like that. I actually regularly compete with organizations like E&Y and Booz Allen and things like that on jobs. And I always say to myself, like, wait, do you not understand who you're hiring? And I'm not saying we're better. Well, we haven't cheated on the ethics portion of anything. Hell, I don't even think we've cheated on anything. But I'm not saying you can't use organizations like that. I'm saying that comparing us to an E&Y, those are night and day different, right? We don't consider them a competitor, and that's not an underhanded, backhanded compliment where I'm saying we don't consider them a competitor because they suck. I'm just, like, we don't think of them as a competitor because they don't do the same thing. That's what we do. How many people here do pen tests of applications and have never written any web code, right? How many people here have tested networks, done Kerber roasting, and never actually implemented Active Directory? Right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean you can't. I want to be very clear. I'm going to pick on you, Becky. You knew this, right? She sat up front. She knew I was going to pick on her. Becky raised her hand when I said, how many people here have done web pen testing without having written web code? And she raised her hand because she's not a web developer, right? But do you know what she is? A fucking awesome pen tester. I've seen the stuff she's done. She's good at it. But do you know the difference between her and somebody who hasn't done web code and is doing pen testing and not doing it well? Is that she's actually focused and looked at trying to understand the system that she's testing. She's actually trying to figure out how it works and what it does. And that's all you gotta do. I'm not telling you have to go back to being an admin. You don't have to go back to being on the help desk. I'm saying understand the technology. And you're gonna run into things you don't understand. I do every day. I don't understand why people ask me to get on stage and speak. But when you find something you don't understand, we had a consultant that we fired. So, yep, you out. I wasn't pointing at Becky there. Because that's what it looked like. The minute I did it, like, yeah, you, get the fuck out of here. No, we had a consultant. Every single time we would ask him a question. Hey, have you got any experience with this? Yes, I do. Really? Because you've known every other fucking technology we've asked you about. I know everything. He was under the impression that consultants should always say, yes, I know that. I can do that. Here's the reality. I can do anything. I can. I absolutely can. Given enough time and enough goggle, I can do it. Doesn't mean I can do it well. Doesn't mean I can do it worthwhilely. My wife told me a few years ago, Kevin, you need a hobby that doesn't involve computers. And then I made a horrible decision. I bought a lathe. And I started making pens. And they suck. I now own more pens than any human should own. Because I don't know what to do with them. But I love making them. And I figured out how to do it. And I have had multiple of my pens sold, so I can actually tell you that I'm a professional pen maker and tester. But I'm not good at it. I enjoy it. It's something I get to play around with. So I would never go to somebody and say, hey, do you need corporate pen giveaways? And let me make 200 and pay me money, right? because I know my limitations. I understand that when I don't know something, do you know what I do? I call somebody. Hey, this is my question. This is my problem. This is what I'm dealing with, right? I have a team of people. We got 25 people on staff. The number of times, and I'm so thrilled by this, the number of times I see one of my consultants say in our Slack workspace, hey, I'm seeing something weird I've never seen before. Anybody want to jump into a meet and talk about it? And they all get together, it's like, oh man, this is the way this works, this is what happened. Oh man, that's awesome. Oh, I could do this, I could do this. Eric Keene, he's one of our principals. I swear to you, that if he walks into your building, your Active Directory infrastructure will just make him a domain admin. Like, he knows stuff about AD that Microsoft doesn't know, right? Like, the guy, and I don't think I'm exaggerating there, the dude is just like an Active Directory whisperer, right? I would like enterprise admin. No problem, here you go, right? Regularly, we drop into networks and we run into some stuff, and you call Eric, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you have admin rights. Thanks. And right, like, he just knows this stuff, and he understands it, and he regularly gets pulled around. Why? Because he's good at it. Then you got Corey. Corey just understands game security, understands how the games work. So when we're testing a gaming system, we reach out to Corey, even if he's not assigned to the job. I know that if I'm gonna futz around with OT stuff, I'm gonna reach out to Don Weber from Cutaway Security. Why? Because he's damn good at it. Have I done OT stuff? Yes, quite a bit. Like I said, my first job out of high school was writing code to control the power grid. I know OT stuff, I know ICS, I know SCADA. But if I really want to test it, Don's who I call, because that's what he lives. We have to have a community of people that we can reach out to. And when you ask a question and the person says, I'm not telling you that because that's my secret sauce, they don't actually know it. That's what that means. Because there is no secret sauce in this industry. There's no secret sauce as a pen tester. You want to know how I pen test stuff? I'll tell you. And you don't even have to ask me. You can go to my website. It outlines it. We're about to release all of our introductory training free to anybody on the internet without an account. No, that's the way it should be. Everybody should have access to this stuff. The anti-siphon model of pay what you can, I love. Because in my opinion, every single person who learns something new makes all of us better. And the best way to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. The number of times I've been on stage or in a class teaching something, and somebody has asked a question and been like, shit, man, I don't know how that works. Let's look it up. Or I've had somebody say something back to me that's like, oh, this is how that works. We as penetration testers, whether we are full-time consultants pen testing, or whether we futz around with bug bounties, or whether we want to be involved in security, we need to make ourselves better. I'm not saying we should have licensing. I'm not saying we should have degrees. I'm not saying we should have any of that stuff. What I'm saying is that we should hold each other accountable. If you're releasing pen test puppy mill reports, fucking stop. If you're running Nessus and calling it a pen test, stop. If you don't understand the technology that you're using or attacking, stop. Plain and simple. Go learn it. Play around with it. Try it out. Talk to other people. If you work for a company that's getting pen tests done, hold your pen testers accountable. Do ride-alongs. We tell our customers all the time, you want to see what we're doing? If you're in Jacksonville, come sit in the office. If you're not, let's go on a meet as we're doing the pen test, and we'll explain the stuff we're doing. We'll show you the stuff. If you get a report from a pen test and you don't understand how to reproduce the vulnerability they found, the exploit they did, that's not a good report. If you get a report and it doesn't give you a story of the test, including the things they tried that failed, then it's not a good report. If the report doesn't tell you the things you did right along with the things you did wrong, it's not a good report. Do better. Make sense? Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments or things you want to throw at Ben? Cool. I think I went 1 minute over. I'm sorry. So the question is, do I have an opinion of black box versus white box? I'm going to throw in there gray box as well. I know you didn't ask that, but I'm going to add it. What's my opinion? Because you, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but you do not believe you've seen much benefit out of a black box test. Right. So you're saying you don't think the black box test is useful. Cool, I'm cool with that. I personally believe that most people ask for black box tests and don't need them. I believe there are very few cases where and just to be clear, my definition of a black box test is I have no information about the organization except the name of the organization and a point of contact, right? Go hack Walmart. I said that for Ben. Hey, do you guys know why Walmart wasn't hacked? They're not a target. So in my opinion, most organizations are not benefited by a black box test. The reason is the idea behind a black box test, one, they're going to be more expensive. On average, a black box test costs twice as much at Secure Ideas than a gray box test, where you give us target information and things like that, and then we go after it. White box is when we have code and document, like all that kind of stuff. And the reason we do that is because we have to do all of this OSINT up front that we don't have to necessarily do with a gray box test, right? Now, let me be blunt, you're paying for that time. And is it worth that time? For most companies, the answer is no. And the reason the answer is no is because we know, it's kind of like phishing tests. In my opinion, for most organizations, phishing tests are a waste of money. What does a phishing test prove? That people click links. I can tell you right now, people will click links. Why will they click links? Because you send them a fucking link every year to tell them to click on it, to tell them not to click on links. You just call it security awareness training. Click this link. You shouldn't have done that. That's all you had to do. Build a website that just said loudly, you shouldn't have done that, and there's your phishing training. Right? Black box is the same way. There are certain organizations that actually black box testing makes sense. We can talk about the types of organizations those fit, but for the majority of organizations, it's a waste of money, right? Do gray box testing, do white box testing, do security assessments, work with a consultant. Don't just do a black box test. The problem is black box test is sexy to talk about, right? Get up on stage, I flew the plane sideways, right? Like that kind of thing. So, make sense? Cool. Everybody enjoy yourself. Hang out all day. This is the best conference you will be in this room.